Good morning, Gardenia! That's right, happy Monday, Mental Health Monday. We got a really fun catch-up show stacked up for you. A lot of links, a lot of just interesting mental health issues we're going to be getting into. We got a COVID block, shocking. That's getting the fog of COVID, the fog of pandemic. It's like the fog of war. Yeah, we got a big COVID block, but it seems like good news finally. But first, we have a couple big announcements for Adam versus the Man. We got to be saying this every day this week. First thing, next week, we are switching time slots by an hour, moving up an hour earlier from 9 to 11 Pacific time to 8 to 10 Pacific time. And part of the reason we're doing that is because we're got a new executive producer who's not with us today, Jim. Jim Freedom is, as of next week, going to be executive director Jim Freedom. And our executive producer, CJ, is being promoted to business manager. This is creating room underneath to bring in more people to the core team with Adam versus the Man. We're very excited about this. So two big announcements. First of all, CJ going to business manager and Jim going to executive producer. But then also the time change, we are moving to an hour earlier. And by the way, since we're in Arizona and this weekend is spring forward, don't forget to let the government fuck with time itself. There will be a 2-hour difference for us here in Arizona. So I'm actually very much looking forward to that because this is right now 9 to 11 Pacific is 10 to noon for us. And it feels like, well, a little late to get going doing everything else in my day. But we are recruiting. And so, CJ, if you would put this graphic up on screen here, please. This is on my Twitter, Instagram. I even deigned to step into the swamp that is Facebook to post this. So Adam Kokesh is recruiting. And first and foremost, the Gardenia Sovereignty Project. And this is based on the goal of getting this micronation here officially ready to declare independence, and to do so in a meaningful way with appropriate documentation and organization to back it up on this July 4th. So Gardenia Independence Day, it just so happens to be the same as American Independence Day. It's just a coincidence, though. So the flyer says you can apply for a government job in a new voluntary micronation website, legal organization, facility development, and merch opportunities. See Independence Day Message to America from the Future King of Gardenia on YouTube and on Instagram at the Gardenia Freedom. So the YouTube video, Independence Day Message to America from the Future King of Gardenia, lays out the vision for this micronation project and some of the things that we can do with it. But there's also like doing stuff here with the property itself, variety of businesses associated with this, big igloo geodesics, different things we can do monetizing the property here that I'm always open to. And then if you want to see like what this place looks like, I mean, man, it's beautiful. I spent the weekend fucking up my hands some more. I know this is like my hands, the scars on my hands tell a story about everything stupid and clumsy I've done over the last week. But yeah, this is just from like sticking myself with a branch, and that's from letting the cat get, that thing is still got like an infected lump on my finger where the cat bit me. And then this from, I actually cut my finger with a chainsaw blade. Yeah, it happens. But I spent the weekend out here doing mostly landscaping and cutting wood. And man, it just, these juniper trees, when you get them like bonsai'd up, they're so beautiful. All right, so at the Garden of Freedom on Instagram, if you want to see a little bit more about what this place looks like. And then Adam versus, oh yeah, see, there it is. CJ's got the aerial shot from Jim's drone. But we've come a long way since then. Man, I look so much younger with short hair. Is that why I feel old? Because I'm growing my hair and my beard out. It just looks that way. Even just like a little while ago. Man, all right, so there's an awesome gallery that CJ is getting on screen there. All the fun we've had out here and me looking a lot younger, even just here. I guess it's kind of nice to think if I grow my hair and beard out like I am, if I ever feel old, like, and I can't take it anymore. I mean, I always feel old. If I really can't take it anymore, I just shave my head and look 10 years younger. It's kind of cool. All right, so Adam versus the man. The other thing we're recruiting, the next thing we're recruiting for, we're always growing our core media business and daily news production. Many opportunities, especially in technical production, social media, and distribution to beat the shadow banning. So right now we need help with production because CJ is going, like, basically we had CJ as our executive producer and Jim as co-host slash co-producer or fill-in producer. So if CJ ever needed a day off, I don't know if you guys noticed, but there were days that Jim was able to produce the show like a boss and just step in and everything's flowing and scenes or articles are getting up on screen and things like that. And so we want to get him some help. Now we want to get a co-producer, and we're actually looking to get someone trained up to be able to do the technical production of the show, and you would be able to, benefit from the wisdom and experience of not only myself but our executive producer CJ, who's going to be around, of course, to help with overseeing and coaching people through the technical production. But me and Jim and CJ, we'll be looking forward to school a couple people up on this. And there are opportunities here if you just want to learn to do your own thing. I mean, if you want to come in on an internship basis and learn how the show is produced and then move on to the next thing. If you're helping out, we want to give people that opportunity as well. And what we're able to do with StreamYard, this production format, this live stream software that CJ has, I think you would hesitate to say mastered, but has mastered. You can definitely learn from that. So for more information, by the way, social media. I've been doing social media by myself since the presidential campaign ended last year, and it's kind of a missed opportunity. And given what we're able to do here, just to have someone help distribute, amplify this message, I hate what social media has become, and it's kind of sad. I mean, I still love it. I shouldn't say that. I love the connectedness. I love the open source ability to broadcast, the development of the hive mind, the human conversation, all of that. But as there was this golden era of independent media, even social media on the internet, before government got involved, before shadow banning became a widespread phenomenon, before the censorship and the platform bullying, even with Twitter causing conservatives to go to Gab, which just got hacked, and then Parler, which is kicked off the app stores. I mean, it's I just want to be able to interact with people where they are. And I feel like I've wasted so much time chasing different numbers or success or likes in social media. And part of the problem is, like, I can't connect with people. I can't cover the news every day. I can't be the messenger for freedom if I'm always like, well, what about this platform? What about this platform? What about, and it's just kind of like they've got us running around trying to keep up with the censorship and work around it. And we really need someone to help step up and help amplify the message. And so if you want to help out with that, that's one area. Distribution to beat the shadow banning, man, it is something else. And this is where you get to work with CJ, and CJ can talk to you for hours just about our YouTube backend, what we've experienced with YouTube censorship and shadow banning over the last year. So, CJ, by the way, I watch Philip DeFranco occasionally. He's a sort of somewhat libertarian-leaning moderate who does, like celebrity gossip, internet, and mainstream news on the Philip DeFranco show. If you want, I recommend it. It's a good show. If you want that media product, he does a good job. He's very consistent. And recently, I watched one of his, and he said, "Oh yeah, in case you didn't see, in case it looked like we didn't do a show yesterday because we didn't show up in your feed." Yeah, there he is, Philip DeFranco. He said it's because they covered some kind of controversial topic that got flagged by a lot of people for being sexually explicit. It was some kind of celebrity sex scandal in the news or something. And but he is very much mainstream and sort of not out of the corporate media's Overton window of what you can say, and covers very mainstream. Or supports the mainstream, status quo narrative. I suppose he's really a centrist moderate with libertarian sensibilities and sympathies. Might be how I would describe him. but he stepped out of that just a little bit, and like you could see, he normally does like 1 million views a day on YouTube. He's been around for a long time in a very pretty similar format throughout his whole career. Got a mad respect for someone who's been able to do that. And he said recently, like, yeah, you might just think of this video we didn't do a video yesterday, but no, it's just that we got flagged and we got taken out of people's feeds. So that's just the reality of YouTube, is that if you're doing something that is, going to constantly run us afoul of the mainstream narrative in some way, then you're going to you're going to be effectively shadow banned on YouTube. It was really interesting to see that. Are we shadow banned as a channel, or is it just every single fucking video we do on this channel individually gets flagged and shadow banned? Who's to say? Probably some of both, but it was interesting to put that in perspective, seeing Philip DeFranco get like shadow banned for one show and just be like, yeah, it happens. So we need some kind of significantly, I want to say, constantly evolving distribution strategy. And I want to get this message on every platform that people are going to watch it. Or I don't know, maybe we find a home in one trustworthy place and we go, no, it's this and YouTube, and that's it. But Patreon, Telegram. I want to develop a presence on BitChute, things like that. So all of that, everything with Adam versus the Man, there are opportunities there. And one of those opportunities, by the way, I'm right now broadcasting. We haven't talked about this much for a while, from the Freedom Factory in Gardenia, and it's this awesome studio, office, bunk storage building that we've got here. It's almost done construction wise, and it's really just a few more things in the interior. I mean, I'm the curtain here is the temporary backdrop. We've got it. Really, if I could just spend a day, I could probably just be done with this whole thing in a day and have it ready to go. If someone wanted to even come out and live here, we got a bunk space, we got a shower, we got a bathroom. It's glamping, but we also have this awesome studio office space. So even if you don't want to be involved with the Gardenia Sovereignty project or homesteading or any of the sort of physical businesses out here, for Adam versus the Man, to have someone, if you're looking to work mostly full time or at least part time on Adam versus the Man, we can provide you a place to live out here as well. And then finally, Homefront Battle Buddies, and this is really exciting. Our new nonprofit. Our mission is to create a community of veterans helping each other pursue alternative healing therapies and transition to civilian life through online organizing and in-person retreats, looking for volunteers, donors, and board member applications. So we just got our seed funding for this project, and I'm really excited to be working with Stephen Mcclure on this and pushing this forward. We are just in the process, I think, as we speak. And CJ says Stephen Mcclure is backstage. I wasn't expecting that. I don't know if he wants to jump in here. Yeah, but we are actually. I hope Stephen can. If Stephen is backstage, Stephen should do comments today. Fill in for Jim and get comments on screen during the show. But yeah, we are Stephen Mcclure. We are taking applications. Stephen, why don't you jump up on stage here for a minute and just give us a quick update on where we are with our 501c3 status and what we're looking for in volunteers and board member applications. Yes. Stephen still there? CJ? Yeah, all right. Stephen Mcclure coming to you from Georgia, ladies and gentlemen. Morning, Stephen. No audio. You muted yourself or
you guys? Can you hear me?
Excellent.
Good. How are you?
Excellent.
So, yeah, let's talk about what's been going on the last 2 weeks. We have raised $1,500-ish in money and labor. Friday morning, East Coast time, I went ahead and filled out all the paperwork. So we will be recognized by the royal throne of the kings of Arizona and the kings of the IRS. But no, seriously, we had gentleman, I don't want to say his name, I don't have permission to say his name, donated like $1,000 so that we could fill out paperwork so the government would leave us the fuck alone. So thanks, dude. I appreciate it. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We have a team of people who, very short order, have found me, saying, "Hey, we want to help make a website, and if you want to help make a website or raise awareness, can we throw my email up? It's real simple. It's Steven at the Freedom Line. We're gonna build a team, but we are 2 weeks ish from having an EIN, which means we're 2 weeks from having a bank account. So it'll be a little bit more straightforward to get money to us, which is always nice. And that's just kind of where we're at right now. But if you want to help out, you can go to Adam at the Freedom Line or Steven at the Freedom Line, which is right there. So yeah, either way, you can contact us. And it's real easy. It's real simple. And we're gonna push against this.
Yeah. By the way, if you were gonna send me an email about Homefront Battle Buddies at Adam of the Freedom Line, I probably would have just forwarded it to Steven anyway. But yeah, so what we're looking to do now is get to our first retreat with our board of directors, and with I want to point out a couple of things here first before we move on about the financial and the nonprofit status. When we say we're calling for volunteers, this could be you billing us for your time, for your services as well as a tax deduction. We wanted, to the legal limit, this is all within the law. This isn't even like you can see that there's a way to abuse this. We're not talking about that, but that you could bill us for your time, your services, or use of your land, and get a tax, as a donation, and then get the tax write-off benefit is that because this is how government says if you give something to a business that we determine is you are a nonprofit, then you get to deduct that from your tax liability. And so there are opportunities there, and Steven this is Steven's first experience running a nonprofit like this himself, but he'll be helping figure out all the ways that you can use that.
So can I address that real quick?
Sure.
So I've talked to a few lawyers here in Georgia and in Arizona. Here's what we're going to do. I took my car into the shop the other day, and I said, fix it, and they gave me a bill. I paid the bill. So when I come to you and say, hey, can you build me a website, you're going to hand me a bill, and I'm going to write you a letter saying that you performed that much work. It's just like anywhere else. Somebody asks if we're going to pay $10 an hour, $20 an hour. Well, electricians get paid $30 an hour, and janitors get paid $10. So whatever you do is what you're going to get paid for. You're going to get paid what you're worth.
And this could be as well for, if you have equipment for retreats, camping stuff or food or anything like that, all of that can be donated for a tax deduction as well. So finally, the board member applications. We are looking to host a retreat here in Gardenia in maybe about 2 months' time. And during that time, we want to build a board of directors of somewhere between 10 and 20 members who want to help oversee the vision of this, but can also bring something to the table in terms of help and organization and resources. So we already have a few signed up who are really excited about this. Steven, what would you say? For our board of directors, we do want veteran status. This is not. There's no combat requirement in any of this. It is inclusive to anybody who has experience serving in the military at all. Where that's sort of the only distinction we're drawing. At some point, on a case-by-case basis, there may be, you were in boot camp for 2 weeks versus you were in boot camp for 2 months, so you're whatever. I don't really care. But we want, other than being veterans, what are you looking for in our board of directors?
So I would like to see, and this is not concrete, but I would like to see that you've been to a quote-unquote war zone, Iraq, Afghanistan, North Africa. Question has come up on like Vietnam vets. I'm not opposed to it, but right now there's a crisis and there's an influx of guys coming back from the global war on terror. I would like to keep it as close as possible. But But here's the deal. If you contact me and say, hey, I'd like to be on your board of directors, the worst thing I'm going to say is no. So if you want to apply, what's going to happen is you're going to send me an email to steven@thefreedomline.com. I'm going to answer that email. We're probably going to have a phone call. If Adam knows you, or if I know somebody that knows you, or whatever, and I can get a worthwhile recommendation, that goes a long way. If you've done this stuff before, if you've been in mental health before, that goes a long way. Everything that you can add to the plate really helps. With that being said, you don't have to have been in the Marine Corps, because if it's only Marine dudes, then I can't be a part of it. If it's only Navy dudes, Adam can't be a part of it. So if you've been involved, contact us.
All right, so Stephen, I think one of the things that I would want is actually so older generation veterans as mentors.
Yeah.
Like I think of like it's kind of crazy to think that my deployment was 17 years ago. There are people who were in diapers then who are now combat veterans. I'm definitely on the older side of this generation of combat vets, and I would think that having guys who like I benefited a lot from the mentorship in Iraq Veterans Against the War from members of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. Now, CJ is asking to clarify. No, I think to summarize what Steven said about combat vet status. For what I'm thinking for board of directors, like it's what we're talking about is healing from the military experience in all ways. And so obviously that is generally more the combat experience, but not necessarily. I mean, if you were a drone operator, for example, or you experienced military sexual trauma at home, or some other kind of command abuse, or who knows whatever other command or medical issues you might have experienced in the military that really had nothing to do with combat. I think what we would want from our board of directors in that sense is two things. And Stephen says he has a preference for combat vets, and I agree in a way, but it would be more veterans who have some experience healing from their military experience, and two, those who can bring resources to the table, right? But then for the program as a whole, and the vision to build this out over the next year is to get to the point where we're having regular retreats all over the country, either state by state or regionally or something like that. And that, hey, have you been to a Home Front Battle Buddies retreat? Is something that you might ask in the veterans community. People go, oh yeah, oh, you haven't? Well, no, check it out. There's one in your area next month. You should go do one of those. And for eventually it to develop into a sort of fraternal organization of veterans,
So,
and get to that point. I think is where we want to go with this.
Yeah. So with the retreats, here's kind of the goal. I really want to get the organization to a point where I'm not able to do everything. Right now, paperwork needs to get filed. I do it. A class needs to get taken for a certification. I do it. Eventually, hopefully in a couple of years, not a couple of decades, I won't be able to do anything because there'll be so many people that are doing stuff and I'm having to manage those people. So this year, my target is 3 to 4 retreats. And then 2022, preferably no less than 12. So at least one a month. After that, one a week. And at some point, I'm going to have enough guys that I can send out, and I'm not having to fly all over the place. I don't want that many frequent flyer miles. But a milestone that was hit 35 minutes ago, Adam, I got a phone call from Hamilton County Mental Health Board, which is Chattanooga. They have recognized the sires of the Mental Health Institute have recognized that I am now a crisis counselor. So what does that do? Because Chattanooga recognizes it, and because Atlanta recognizes it, because 2 states recognize that I am a crisis counselor, we are now a mental health awareness facility, or mental health awareness organization. So, and once
One
again,
more box.
hopefully in 10 years, I'll be like one dude out of 1,000, and hopefully everybody will have the mental health awareness course under their belt. And that's just kind of where we're going. We're going to grow. We're going to grow. And if you want to see us grow, the best time to get involved is right now, because I could really use some help.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for joining us, Stephen. If you want to stick around and do comments, if you're backstage, you want to just throw them up while we do the rest of the show, that'd be really appreciated. All right. So quick promos. I should say one other thing that we took off of this version of the flyer is book publishing, and I am in the process of editing right now my war memoir, Hot, Dirty, and Dangerous. There's a fun collection of stories for my deployment in Iraq, and the 2024 campaign manifesto, American Freedom. So if you're interested in any of those projects, send me an email, adam@thefreedomline.com. If you want to support the show, adamversustheman.com. Join us on Patreon, patreon.com/adamversustheman, $10 a month. Join the Producers Club. Blah, 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 blah. We're going to skip everything else and jump right into the stories here. That's been enough. We're going to be mentioning the recruiting story here throughout the week until all the positions are filled. But you can refer back to today's show for the full explanation. Don't worry, we're not going to do this whole longer version every time. All right, and so we have a few top stories before we get to our COVID block. Just got to warn CJ. All right, so from the Fulcrum, the fulcrum.us by Sarah Swan, report, U.S. contributes to ongoing decline of freedom worldwide. Yes, that is a tone of gloating in my voice. Now, the problem is it says the U.S. contributes to the decline of freedom. Now, maybe a bit of a definitional thing, but I would suggest that most of the blame here lays at the feet or really belongs to the U.S. federal government and government in the United States as a whole. What is the U.S.? Is it the people? Is it the land? Is it the borders? Is it the government? Well, which of those do you think is most likely to contribute to the ongoing decline of freedom worldwide, and why? Now, I'm going to bring it back to there is the government is not separate from the people. It is not, as Abraham Lincoln said, of, by, and for the people, but it is somewhat our responsibility, let's just say. So, more bad news for democracy defenders. A new report confirms worldwide declines in freedom for the 15th year in a row, and the United States isn't helping matters. Now, here, oh God, so many just fun little definitions to point out, to deconstruct. Defenders of democracy. Well, what is democracy? Well, in America, it was once described as two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. I think that was Franklin, right? But what is a democracy? And in the sense of the word itself, rule by the people. Well, who's against rule by the people? Yeah, they're the autocrats and the true monarchists, right? But democracy, as we know it, is a modern system of government, is the majority voting to impose its will on the minority, to force its will on minorities. But yeah, democracy's majority rule, really, it's not rule of the people, it's rule of the majority against the minority, which really means whoever can sway majority of opinion is in charge. Shocking that such a system would be bad for freedom, right? I told you so. Freedom House, a nonpartisan research organization, on Wednesday released its annual report, Freedom in the World, detailing how global democracy was further weakened by the COVID-19 pandemic, economic and physical insecurities, and violent conflict. While the United States is still considered, quote unquote, free, it was a free country. The country's scores continue to decline over the last decade, dropping 3 points in 2020 alone. Countries were graded based on the political rights and civil liberties enjoyed by their populace rather than government performance. This report is the latest in a series of studies calling attention to global issues involving democracy and corruption. America's Democratic integrity took serious hits from the contentious 2020 elections, was plagued by disinformation and attempts to undermine the results by former President Donald Trump. The country's response to the pandemic, police violence against protesters, also negatively impacted its score. As a result, U.S. had 83 out of 100, lowest score to date, an 11-point drop since 2020. Or sorry, since 2010. Really, 11 years. 11 years ago, I have to kind of question the validity of the system of measurement of freedom. If in 2010 we were doing so great, we were 94% free, although it's not a percentage, right? Just out of 100, right? All right, whatever. The report said, quote, only a serious and sustained reform effort can repair the damage done during the Trump era to the perception and reality of basic rights and freedoms in the United States. Really, just the last 4 years, there's some political bias in this, right? Overall, 73 out of the 195 countries analyzed in the report received lower freedom scores in 2020 than the year prior. Shocking, right? That's COVID for you. Only 28 nations saw improvements. The 94 remaining countries didn't have any significant change. This difference in the number of countries that improved versus worsened, the so-called democracy gap, has been growing over the last 15 years and saw its widest rift last year. Now, obviously, if you're saying democracy and freedom go hand in hand, rule by the people want to be free, then you're not talking about a democratic majority rule system of government, even if it's called a republic where voting of those representatives happens by majority vote. The 2020 report labeled 82 countries as free, which is the fewest since 2005, and they account for less than 20% of the world's population. Now, obviously, this is a bit of an arbitrary benchmark, right? If we say, there are this many countries that are free and this many that are not. Well, obviously, in a sense, freedom is very relative. And less, but even by that standard, now it's 82 countries, less than 20% of the world's population, and that's including the United States. That means 80% of the world is less free than even here in the United States. Yeah. Meanwhile, the number of countries considered not free reached an all-time high, 54, and 59 considered partly free. So the report concludes with a statement from President Michael Abramowitz. Our report concludes that democracy today is beleaguered but not defeated. Its adversaries have grown more powerful, making the world a more hostile environment for self-government. But its enduring appeal among ordinary people, which we've already seen this here in places like Russia and Myanmar, bode well for the future of freedom. Now, what it doesn't get into, at least this article, the report goes into much greater depth, but U.S. contributes to ongoing decline of freedom worldwide. It's not like the United States was just like, oh, the world's getting less free. Let's just do our little part. We'll contribute we'll take ourselves down 11 points over the last 11 years. Sure, why not? No. When it says U.S. contributes to ongoing decline of freedom worldwide, you could take that headline literally in the context of this story, but there's so much more in terms of policy that's being exported. And here in the United States, as protected citizens of the empire, we get a certain degree of freedom, certainly not absolute freedom. You don't have the freedom to leave with your money. You don't have the freedom to just step away from the system peacefully. And what we do, or I should say what the federal government does in contributing to the decline of freedom worldwide, is so much worse than just being a bad example. Think about the money that the CIA, the FBI, well, not the FBI, excuse me, the CIA and the State Department give to oppressive governments around the world that contribute to reductions in freedom. Now, you look at, China as with a population of 1 billion, being a lot less free than the United States. I don't want to pretend that the United States federal government is like the only evil empire. No, there's another one dominating the other side of the planet as well. So you think about even Iraq and Afghanistan today, as the big ones. But what about Yemen? What about the support for Saudi Arabia? It's like last week it was determined that the Sultan who they thought was responsible for the Khashoggi murder, the royal prince of Saudi Arabia, was responsible for that. And Biden, the entire time he was running for president, said, no, we can't have this. It's wrong. And then gets into office and he's found to have been responsible for it. Well, it's a delicate situation. We got to keep the arms flowing. Oh, geez, that sounds really good for freedom. If your major partner oil trading with arms with the United States federal government, as Saudi Arabia is, oh, you can murder our reporters, and yeah, that's okay. You get away with it. So yeah, now there's a deeper, phenomena to Americanism, though, that is, very much hand in hand with the violent history of America, and it is in a way connected to manifest destiny, the conquest of the Native Americans, the imperial expansion that is inherent to our history. It is also grounded in a deeper psychological narcissism. Yeah. Let's look at this from that perspective for a second, because no other country on earth really has made the same kind of industry out of national pride. But when you arrogance comes before the fall, but also with how can you do so much unjustified violence and spreading of not freedom around the world, anti-freedom. Dare we say dare we call it tyranny? Spreading so much tyranny around the world without a certain arrogance, seeing yourself as better than others, and because if you're not better than others, or at least smarter than others, why should you be able to make decisions for them? Why should you be able to take a life and say, well, it's going to be better for these other people? Why can you play God with other people's lives? So we go to salon.com for a very appropriate story for Mental Health Monday. Narcissism can be contagious and the repercussions extend beyond relationships. Narcissists can infect those they are close to with devastating results for relationships as well as politics. Now, if I hadn't set this story up, you might have read it as I did when I first looked at it from an individual perspective, as opposed to a nationalist perspective. But think of a national American zeitgeist of narcissism. Has America infected Canada and Mexico? Maybe those that the United States federal government is the greatest manifestation of American narcissism, is doing business with closely, perhaps Saudi Arabia, or China even. How can we tell China not to oppress the Uyghurs when the American history of oppression of minorities is far worse by many standards, if just not as up to date? Dr. Jessica January, a licensed psychologist who practices in New York City, recalled why one of her patients sought treatment with her. The former client, a woman in her late 20s, had been raised by parents who used her and her siblings to validate their own egos. They would set up competitions between them, rewarding whichever sibling won by giving them money and verbal praise and admonishing the children who lost. As she matured into her adolescence, her mother would make comments about her weight, stating, "What will people think of me if I have a fat daughter?" Bear told Salon by email. Every decision my client had made had to be in line with her parents' wishes to appear successful, wealthy, and elite. This was the only form of love my client ever knew. The consequence was such that as an adult, she only sought out transactional relationships in which she could gain monetary reward as compensation for body and beauty. She viewed most interactions as competitions and transactions. There could only be winners and losers. In this way, she continued her parents' legacy as a flying monkey of their cause. Now, think about this in terms of the American education system. Are we raised by loving parents most of our childhoods? No, we spend most of our waking hours as children in America today, Even back in my day, uh, even in my childhood, I was born in 1982. I spent more time at school or in front of the TV at school than with my parents. I easily have more time at school than with my parents. Now that for a child, in an unschooling environment who gets more time with their parents and their parents are helping and guiding and actively involved in their education, they get that, normal, healthy parental love and affirmation. Whereas if you spend that time in an institution, you're subject to this kind of thinking. Now, television for most kids today actually spend more time watching TV, even if it's with a parent. And I mean, I don't really count that because you're taking in. So it's not as bad as a kid watching TV alone, right? But unless and even if the parent is actively watching TV with their kid, the kid's attention is on the TV, not on the parent or engaged in a healthy educational experience. So that's it makes a lot of sense that America would be so affected, right? There's a reason why Bear used the term flying monkey. It is a reference not only to the flying monkeys from the classic 1939 film The Wizard of Oz, but also to a condition known as narcissism by proxy. As Bear explains, the phenomenon of narcissism by proxy occurs when people act on a narcissist's behalf to contribute to their goals and gains, despite not necessarily being narcissists themselves. Sound like American foreign policy? Narcissists will cycle through idealizing their victims and denigrating them in order to condition people to internalize their will and become extensions of themselves. As Bear explained, because a victim can then mimic the narcissist's behavior, any ability to question or condemn the behavior ceases. The fall from grace or severe devaluation they will receive, and the fact that if they condemn the narcissist, they will also have to face their own demons. Recently, the idea of narcissism by proxy has tiptoed into mainstream pop psychology discussions for reasons that are clearly political. Last month, a Medium.com blog post written by a therapist on the topic went semi-viral, and the thesis that our culture has become more narcissistic generally, and the cultural conversation around that proposition extends back decades before Donald Trump or the rise of social media, to name two recent narcissistic touchstones. Dr. Ramani Darvasula, a licensed clinical psychologist and professor of psychology who was noted as an expert on narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic abuse, elaborated Salon on the exact nature of narcissism by proxy. Quote, narcissism by proxy is not an official term and is also variously called contagious narcissism, infectious narcissism. It can mean taking on the mantle of grandiosity and entitlement and contempt for someone else who holds more power, such as a parent or leader, and almost mirroring that behavior. It can also mean that the proxy almost gets more grandiose as their narcissistic inspiration has or gets more power. The lead narcissist uses their bully pulpit to foster a sense of victimization in the followers, who are then emboldened to fight even harder for the cause of the lead narcissist in the name of vindicating their victimization. So a leader can mobilize followers to attack a group who has been painted as the bad people. And with the followers as the victims of the bad people, this is a way for the lead narcissist to centralize power and create an unseen devotion in the proxies. This can also create a feeling of shared omnipotence, or the idea that someone with whom you identify and has presumed power winds up giving the proxy more power by default. As that leader has power, exerts power, gains power, those sharing in the power may now attempt to flex more muscle in all areas of their lives, with families, partners, colleagues, strangers on social media, because of the emboldened quality of the shared omnipotence. If the narcissistic leader loses power for any reason, there can be tremendous persecutory ideation. For example, people are out to get me. There's a fiendish plot. Now, were you thinking about the U.S. federal government as I was reading that, or your own life, or both? Because I think about both here, right? And there's a kind of triangulation effect of a narcissist. I've had narcissists in my life. I've dated narcissists, and I felt that of influence on me, and internalizing their motives, having bought into their narratives or heard their stories long enough, their victimization stories even. It leads you to want to feel like you are somehow righteous in opposing whatever they are opposing. But it also creates a sort of pyramid of narcissism. And I just finished watching the first 3 seasons of Narcos, and I think about like Colombian drug cartels or Mexican drug cartels, like these big organizations where people attach themselves to giant fountains of money from running drugs or guns or people or whatever another criminal enterprise. And there tends to be a narcissism that goes along with that in the successful people operating at a large scale in the black market, because they have to kill people, or they get to kill people and keep themselves from getting caught. And there's a sense of power with that. And then you think of the sicarios, the assassins are, they feel like they're untouchable because they're in a gang. And you go, well, shit, Adam, we've heard you make the comparison between drug gangs and the U.S. federal government before. But yeah, it's kind of obvious that there is a pyramid of power effect here that is really centered around a certain psychological phenomena of narcissism, of unhealthy ego. And the thing with, well, one of the things with narcissism is not just like, what is healthy ego versus unhealthy ego? Well, when your sense of self is derived from downward social comparison, and this is a well-established theory in social psychology, that people develop, people who are have a weak sense of self, people who have a deficiency in healthy ego or self-image, generally turn to out-group downward social comparison in order to bolster their ego. And that's something that we see in nationalism and racism. That is the common dynamic, and that if you don't feel good enough about yourself because of who you are, well, at least I'm not one of those, whatever racial, insert favorite racial slur here, and because you get something out of that, like what is the root of racism as opposed to acceptance. It's one thing, to say, well, I'm racist, but I don't really care about it. I mean, these people are different, but who cares? I love everybody. All the differences, whatever. Versus, well, no, I hate them because they're bad people and they're a threat to me and my people are better than them. See the difference there? That's a much more typical racist attitude than just sort of like, well, I don't care, but I'm racist, because it's driven by a psychological deficiency. Nationalism also meets that psychological need to identify with an in-group and to feel better. And when your sense of superiority over others comes from that unhealthy place, then you have the narcissist, the sociopath, and a sociopath or is a less severe form of psychopath or psychopathy, which is complete inability to relate to others as human beings, to connect with people. So if you're a sociopath, you see people as less than human beings. Maybe you have some ability to connect, but you're much more likely to hurt other people because you don't see them as people in the name of what's good for you out of selfishness or in the greater good, right? So there's so many examples of individual stories as I've been going through challenges in relationships, read different books. The Sociopath Next Door was one of the most informative for me. G.I. Mary Jane weighing in. I think that narcissists can be inspiring in a very productive and positive way, but that's just rare. Well, so G.I. Mary Jane, I'm making a distinction here, right? And it's not that a narcissist is a good person or a bad person necessarily, but that they have an unhealthy sense of self and ego that leads to unhealthy behaviors. I mean, you can say, well, they're just a benign narcissist, but that doesn't really exist because it inherently affects how you relate to and deal with other people. So, as Christian explained, the cult leader / follower relationship is based on psychological manipulation. The followers do not know what they are signing up for when they attach to a leader, in the same way that people, usually women, don't date and marry an abuser. The person they are dating and marrying is a devoted partner. Only later is it evident that the whole relationship is based on deception and coercion. Now, in terms of the federal government's relationship with governments in other countries, it was pretty well understood that deception and coercion was part of the game from the beginning, but not to the people of those countries who thought that America was coming to save them, or even to the troops who thought that they were going to save other countries, only to find out later, no, that's really not what this was about. So romantic relationships, as the article points out, are ripe grounds for narcissism by proxy, because when you're intimately involved with someone, it's easy for them to manipulate you to work against other people. Maria Evans weighs in: does the narcissist know he is a narcissist? You can. And I would say that by my definition, narcissism really is a scale. In the sense that the only person who's not, I mean, you can go from completely unhealthy ego, right? On the scale of people who have strong egos and sense of themselves, there's a spectrum of like from completely healthy, like my ego, and I'd say I'm pretty close to this, right? Because you guys are like, there's a narcissist, and I go, well, what about me? And I think I'm pretty close to this, but I know I'm not perfect. I know that I have some tendencies to when I feel insecure or depressed or beaten down or just like physically or mentally weak because I'm physically weak, sleep deprived or whatever, or drunk, like I notice that I have, I do sometimes derive ego or a sense of self from unhealthy sources. But I would say overall, I have a very healthy ego, and it's almost entirely grounded, in positive self-love, as opposed to someone who has like a very healthy ego, but it's completely based in, well, I'm white and I'm smart and I'm buff and fuck y'all, I'm better than the rest of you. I don't know what accent I'm doing here. That's the narcissist accent, right? No, so on that spectrum, I think we all need to be striving to move this way, to say, or if you're not already at healthy ego, to bring yourself up to healthy ego without going this way and going this way instead, and developing an ego and sense of self that's based on real, true self-love. And one of the reasons I talk about this, I hope you guys are seeing the connection between self-love and mental health and self-care, and thus government and politics and freedom and fear and exploitation and tyranny, blah blah blah. But this really, like, when I said, where do I have my narcissistic behavioral tendencies? It's not when I'm feeling good about myself. When I've been working out and eating right and getting shit done, and my relationships are healthy, and I'm feeling positive love in a healthy way for my family, like then I have this strong, healthy sense of self. So self-care, oftentimes we don't even feel good about ourselves when we're not taking care of ourselves. So it's really critical, both in terms of physical health, to support your mental health, and then the mental health itself to be on point, to not go the opposite direction, where you want to maintain that strong ego, that strong sense of that self. And when you lose the things that keep you there, you can go down, you can go sideways and develop narcissistic ego, or you can go down and just lose all strong sense of yourself. So there's a lot about which you can look into this with, as it relates to personal relationships. But I want to go back, and this really does come down to the self, right? And this is talking about I'm talking about America, the American population, the American zeitgeist, et cetera, et cetera. But there are ways that we can connect our individual experience as Americans to the injustices done by, as I said, I think the greatest manifestation of American narcissism, the federal government. So one of the reasons for narcissism by proxy, as the article says, is Stockholm syndrome. You've heard us talk about this in the political context before, a condition in which people identify with their aggressors or their captors as a type of defense, in which a bond is created where the victim is offered a locus of control. Victims may also abuse others because the victim internalizes the hostility in an effort to psychologically deny their own victimization. Therefore, through emulation, the victim alleviates the reality of helplessness and terror while maintaining the illusory bond of shared love and protection. And so, there's a lot of different ways that this can manifest. There's some ways we see it in personal relationships that are overwhelming and very clear and very obvious. And in terms of the sociopathic relationship pattern of exploitation, of latching onto a victim, taking advantage of them, and then kind of using them up and moving on, it's very overwhelming and obvious. When we look at the bigger social psychological dynamics, it's not as overwhelming. It can happen, just because we're not here, just a little bit that we slip off of healthy ego at a massive national level, when we're able to be exploited at that level, can manifest as some really horrific federal government policy, or government policy in general. So those who are researching narcissism by proxy online will quickly stumble across links that reference former President Donald Trump. After all, here's a political leader who has inspired literal cult-like movements such as QAnon, spent years conditioning his supporters to believe that it is impossible for him to legitimately lose an election and then become the first president to try to cling to power despite losing his re-election campaign. The end result is that thousands of his supporters rioted in the Capitol to try to overturn a legitimate election result. Now, about Trump as a narcissist, I mean, I don't really care to analyze him personally, but if you think about, the healthy ego versus unhealthy ego, there were a lot of Americans who felt beaten down, who didn't have any kind of healthy ego, and there's this, white male beaten down phenomena of like, and it's, I'm not trying to say white men aren't still, the privileged ones, but there is a sense of that privilege slipping. And so if that sense of ego that was unhealthy slips, or even if that healthy ego starts to slip, there's a temptation to compensate with unhealthy ego. And that was a big part of what Trump represented, what he was able to appeal to psychologically, and why he developed that really, committed following. So narcissists rely. So Dr. Cohen, associate professor, blah, 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 writes, narcissists rely on people who help to enable their behavior. After noting that this dynamic plays out in parent-child and romantic relationships, she noted that we have seen this with Trump and his supporters, many of whom come to appear even more narcissistic than he does. Narcissists seduce others into patterns of domination. They become so entangled that they are hard to escape. We see this especially in terms of truth claims that are distortion of reality. This can account for everything from refusing to accept the results of the 2020 election, even though they were unanimously upheld by dozens of courts, to embracing Trump's pseudo-scientific ideas about the COVID-19 pandemic. Abusers are experts at distorting reality and claiming the truth while denying others' experiences and feelings, Cohen explained. Narcissists by proxy are often in the position of covering for the narcissist lying and apologizing for him to or her to help save face. They also might start to blame others to keep from blaming the narcissist. In turn, this person may wind up becoming hard to deal with. Oh. Do you ever get that the government is trying to tell you that your truth isn't reality? Do you ever get the feeling that the powers that be are distorting reality? Well, why? Why? Same like any narcissist. And I feel like, as a member of the military, I was a narcissist by proxy for the federal government. Oh yeah, I mean, I was willing to kill. And we lie, we apologize we help cover up things for the federal government because we are narcissists by proxy to this golden calf, this false god of the United States federal government that we have created. Start to blame others to keep from blaming the narcissist. Well, it's not, I mean, you think about this for statists in general. Well, it's not really that government's bad. It's that we had that one bad politician, or, yeah, right. If we just got the right people in charge, the system would be fine. Yeah. So no, there's like, yeah, hard to deal with. Yeah. Yeah. So we see this, kind of exposed with Donald Trump. And it is worth examining because it's not about Trump. I mean, if you think that Trump, and Trump is special for America, like psychologically, special, who really did illuminate a lot of these unhealthy psychological dynamics in American politics. But if you look at him honestly, you look at America, you look at the government honestly, you go, well, really, it's not Trump, it's America, it's the system, it's this government, and it's this unhealthy narcissism that government is really founded on, at least as we know it. And this is, again, another great argument for decentralization, for community-based government, for voluntarism, is that anytime you create these large central authorities, they inherently attract narcissists. If you allow your society to say, yes, we need this central planning, well, a central planner, is going to be someone who has the ego to tell other people what to do. The most successful ones who are going to benefit from that power are going to be the ones who are narcissists and sociopaths who won't let other people get in their way, right? As Lee explained, so we know that it's tapping into a pathological process. However, she says the GOP is making it worse because, quote, the entire political party seems increasingly to exist simply to buttress the grandiose self-concept of one person. Although it is normal for people to have a level of identity tied in with their position, affiliation, or their support of a candidate, it is not normal or healthy for vast segments of the population to relinquish their personalities, independence of thought, or even self-interest is measured in multiple ways, including their livelihoods, their health, and even their survival. And you go, oh my gosh, how can you say this applies uniquely to Trump supporters, but you want to say, oh yeah, it's the Republicans are making this worse? No, they just happen to have been taken over by an individual who led a cult of personality because he was a powerful personality. For the Democrats, they worship government the same fucking way. So as she goes on, in the case of Trump supporters, Lee highlighted two main characteristics: narcissistic symbiosis and shared psychosis. The narcissistic symbiosis refers to narcissistically wounded individuals in the population being drawn to one another as leader and followers. The person in the position of leader uses that position to garner the adulation of crowds that he craves in order to compensate for an intolerable inner sense of inferiority, worthlessness, and lack of capacity. The followers, who are also narcissistically wounded, are magnetically attracted to this leader who projects this grandiose omnipotence in order to attract a following. Now, I think about what it means to serve in the military, but also what it means to serve as a cop, as a politician, as a bureaucrat, as a champion of government itself. That I'm doing this to save people. Really? No, you're doing it to feel like you're saving people because of some psychological deficiency. Even though outsiders may view the leader's behavior as cartoonish, the projection of omnipotence and infallibility is the essence of narcissism. Think about that. Does government itself want you to think that it is omnipotent and infallible? Oh, yeah. As let's see, Anonymous weighs in, the term originated from Greek mythology. A young man named Narcissus fell in love with his image reflected in a pool of water. And it's funny because it's not that overwhelming self-love, that sort of concept of narcissism coming from Narcissus gazing into the pond. It's really a deficiency of that. It's not that becomes overwhelming. An overwhelming self-love is not narcissism. It's an unhealthy ego. She added, quote, they find irresistible this projection of a leader figure who is perfect and undefeatable, but it never satisfies. A leader would destroy a country to keep getting it, and followers would seek him to their destruction or the break of the spell, whichever comes first. Well, America, are we going to let government destroy us, or are we going to break the spell? I, for one, have broken the spell for myself. That's why we have seceded here. But I hope that for this Mental Health Monday, you see the connection between the individual psychological manipulation and your experience with that of our nation and our relationship with our very narcissistic government that is dragging freedom down around the world. And with that, I got to go close the door. Something's wrong with the door here. Let's get Steven up on stage. Steven, thank you so much for stepping up and doing comments, filling in for Jim today. Maybe get some more up and let us know what the audience is thinking.
Yeah, let's read some of these comments. But before we do that, I want to point something out. The Mental Health Institute of Chattanooga says something. Okay. Let's see. Moose Girl 08 thinks you are the best, Adam. Oh, I'm losing the comments. They're all moving too quick. Moose Girl has commented every other time, so we're going to read some of hers. Most people have some level of narcissism. There is some healthy narcissism, but that could be called a healthy ego. I think there could be some truth to that.
Well, this is why the definitions themselves are important. The way I define it, I don't think there is healthy narcissism. I guess you could say narcissism could be an ego crutch, and it could be healthy by my definition in some weird circumstance where if you're really beaten down to the point of it's better to be narcissistic than suicidal, right? So in that sense, narcissism can be healthy, right?
Your level of self identification, how you perceive yourself. There's a
self-esteem, right?
Yeah, your self-esteem. If it's too high, we would call that narcissism. If it's too low, we're going to call that. Is that what you're saying?
No. So this is why. So there's. I'm making a square. I'm making a chart where vertical axis is self-esteem.
Okay.
And left to right is healthy versus unhealthy. So you can have high self-esteem and it be entirely healthy or entirely unhealthy. It can be loving and legitimate, or it can be narcissistic. But if you're at so the danger of any narcissism is that it inclines you to sociopathic behavior. That is behavior based on not being compassionate to others or seeing them fully as human beings. But there's also a danger of being too low on self-esteem entirely, which is depression and being suicidal.
I could see that. That makes a lot of sense. So it's Mental Health Monday. Let's talk about some guidelines for remaining mentally healthy. Every person should spend 15 minutes a day doing something they love. It should be something that you can do every day. For me, I spend a little bit more. I go on a run and I read my Bible. Right? Those are two things that I enjoy. It gives me time by myself. It allows me to get ready for the day. It allows me to de-wind for the day. It allows me to do all these different things. And it's not really it doesn't cost money. So if I don't have cash to spend, I've got a Bible, I've got shoes, we're good to go. And then about once a month, you should spend 4 hours at a time doing something you love. So we are being...
I'd say more often than that.
Well, minimum is 4 hours once a month. Maybe every other weekend, I don't know. But at least 4 hours every month. And that's at one time. We are being given money by the government. Guess what? I'm going to spend some of that money on a canoe because I like to go canoeing. So take this money that they're using to destroy the economy with, buy a canoe, buy something, and have some fun with it.
Yeah, no. Are we getting? Is that what's coming? Do we have $1,400 checks in the mail at this point now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have to. We did miss the passage of the $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. I should have told people we're going to cover some urgent headlines today, and then our COVID block, and then we have some more headlines. But then tomorrow, I'm saving up a big econ block, and we're going to cover the $1.9 trillion stimulus and what's in it and the implications for you.
Okay. I'll keep throwing comments up. Hey, are we doing a troll of the week or a troll of the day?
I guess producer club comment today, top super chat, or now that we're halfway through the show, tops.
Gentlemen, real quick on that note, Stephen, you're natural at doing comments here. Just keep them going. You're doing great. Yeah. And but hey, I would ask Adam that maybe today, since it's his first time doing comments, the comment of the day gains access, and Stephen can tell us which one he thinks the comment of the day.
All right. Let Stephen choose the comment of the day by Stephen's standards, and we'll see what he comes up with.
Let's do it, boys and girls.
All right, jumping back into the headlines before we get to our COVID block. This is something that's been relevant to a lot of our viewers, and our guest booker, Marcus Pulis in Indiana, is dealing with this himself, and that a lot of areas, Texas especially with the winter storm, where there are energy systems or electric or gas that are semi-privatized, like where it's the worst of both worlds, private profits, socialized losses. There is an allowance for price gouging in these systems, and a lot of people in Texas have been up in arms about this, but this is something that's happening all around the world. And this story was, I think this is the one that Marcus sent us in the Producers Club chat from Fox 4 KC, Fox 4 Kansas City. Natural gas customers report major increase in utility bills in aftermath of winter blast. Yeah, and people, that people are reporting that their gas bills are going like up by 4 times, 5 times, 10 times in some places. In Texas, it was all around the electric rather than the gas, but similar kind of manipulation. And it's because we have government grids taken over that were developed with government money to create centralized systems based on government running them and subsidization that have then been handed over to private companies who are running them for profit, benefiting from the public infrastructure. Now, there are so many things I could pick apart in what's wrong with this, right? I don't think anyone in our audience is blaming this on the free market, because this is nowhere near a free market, obviously. But what I want to point out here is that the time that this is happening, I think the bigger story here is that the energy industry doesn't realize that they're shooting themselves in the foot for the long run. Or maybe they, I don't know. I don't want to say, oh, look, energy industry, I figured out something that you don't know, little old Adam Kokesh over here. No, they know what they're doing. But they also have to know that part of what they're doing with this kind of sudden increase in prices is going to lead people to just default on their bills and switch to solar or alternatives to propane for their homes. For example, in the cabin that I'm building right here in Gardenia right now, we plan to heat the house with a wood burning stove, and that's something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to have a cabin with a wood burning stove, and now we're gonna have one. But we're gonna have propane integrated at such a small scale as to be insignificant. But if because we're gonna have propane for heating water and for a stove oven. Now, I would like we're at the point where I could use a solar power system to do electric for those things, and they would cover it, but it would be significantly more expensive. So, but I'm able to, with this system, with solar electricity and a wind turbine. By the way, I'm really excited about this. I just made a deal with the turbine guy. He's going to come out here and install a wind turbine on the property, and we are going to be doing a segment every 2 weeks on alternative energy with him. So that's hopefully starting. For Good News Fridays, every other Friday, we're going to have the turbine guy on for an alternative energy segment and get into some of these, these actual mechanics of how this, how this works for you as an individual right now. Because if you're going around paying $90, let's say you're paying $90, right? For like this guy says his monthly winter heating bill is usually $90. February was quadruple that amount, $360 a month. Well, what can you do for $360? You can put in a wood burning stove in your house and have zero heating bills from then on. Yeah, propane and propane accessories. Thank you. You've enrolled. Yes, I have. So for people in Texas who are being charged, so if you normally $100 or $200 for their house for electricity, suddenly they're being charged $3,000-$4,000. You can buy solar and run 90% of your house with a solar system that you can buy for now 1 month's bill. See, I think we are already at the point where it makes sense. I mean, not just for me personally, not just because of how I want to live, living off grid, but even for the average suburban house in America for heating and electric. you're going to pay. You look at how much are you going to pay over the next year? And this is, hey, I really want everybody in the audience to take what I'm about to say to heart, to consider for yourself switching over to something more efficient in lifestyle, whatever it is. But how much are you going to spend on electricity in the next year? Now, by the way, one of the problems with this, I understand limitations. If you don't own your home, if the bank owns your house and you pay a mortgage, for example, but if you're in that case, you can be reasonably certain that you're going to be somewhere, that you're not going to get kicked out, for a reasonable period of time. And you go, how much am I going to spend on electricity here over the next year? What does it add up to? Oh shit, I could spend that on and it's not easy for people living paycheck to paycheck. I understand that this is really tough. But if you want to stick it to the man, you're about to get a $1,400 check, consider getting a little solar power system for your house. For $1,400, you can buy a complete solar power system that will run, lights and personal electronics and a TV for a household comfortably. It's a bit of a stretch. Maybe just barely. Maybe you want to get a generator. Get a generator too. For when you need to run the dishwasher, and you can be off grid. You're gonna save money in the long run. I mean, if you like, for me, it's for heat. I live in the woods. There's trees everywhere. There's dead wood on the ground everywhere, like that I haven't cleaned it up yet. For me to say, well, gee, do I want to heat? And man, it fucking kills me right now because I'm staying in this cabin building. It's a shed. It's a prefab shed that we had delivered here. And I'm heating it with propane in the little corner where I'm sleeping. And it's like, fuck, man, I need to get this wood burning stove installed. But it's a bit of a process with the construction here. So it's happening. But like, do I want to be heating with propane? Hell no. I have an abundance of wood around, of natural fuel. And, and you want to say, well, hey, it's, you're going to produce fluorocarbons burning wood. Well, what about burning gas or moving gas to wherever you are, or whatever else it is, or even electric heat? And electric heat's almost there. I'd be really, inclined to build my system for this house to be able to switch over for the water heater and for the stove oven to electric. But creating heat from electricity draws so much power that you need the next level of system. So, I mean, I'd almost rather, just be able to run a generator when I'm using the stove oven and have, all electric. I don't know. I'm going to figure that out. But I encourage everybody who's, in a situation where you're not, about to get evicted. That's a lot of people right now. I'm sorry if you're in that category. But for everybody who's able to do the math and make this calculation, think ahead and look to alternative energy. From Reuters, Yemen Houthis fire missiles, drones at Saudi oil facilities. Yemen's Houthi forces fired drones and missiles at the heart of Saudi Arabia's oil industry on Sunday, attacking the Saudi Aramco facility at Ras Tanura. In an assault, the kingdom said was aimed at the security and stability of the global energy supply. Announcing the attacks, the Houthis also said they attacked military targets in the Saudi cities of Dammam, Asir, and Jazan. The Saudi Energy Ministry said an oil storage yard at Ras Tanura, the site of an oil refinery and the world's biggest offshore oil loading facility, was attacked with a drone, but there were no casualties or property loss. It added that shrapnel from a ballistic missile fell near Aramco's residential compound in Dhahran. So, I mean, this is going to be an excuse for more escalation, and yet it's just, oh yeah, no one got hurt, nothing was destroyed. But we're going to make a big headline out of it, and then Biden will have an excuse to send more American bombs somewhere in the Middle East. All right, with that, it's Monday. Time to catch up on COVID. What you are about to hear is not medical advice. It is mere parody, and nothing I am going to say is to be taken seriously. It is, if it were, it would be very, very misleading medical advice, if that. The Washington Free Beacon kicks us off with this headline today. Warner Media CEO says coronavirus really good for ratings. No shit. CNN's parent company predicts wall-to-wall COVID coverage not going away anytime soon. Keep people afraid. Keep people doom scrolling. Give people a story that says you better refresh every 30 minutes or you're not going to know what's going on because things are changing so fast. And I hope people appreciate that this is part of the service we provide with Adam versus the Man, is that COVID is contained to our COVID blocks. So that means that when we cover this, we do it in a way that is just really not just, what you need to know on days that we're not doing COVID blocks. We do a little bit more, but we do a lot less. We try to only cover COVID, once or twice a week and stay out of that daily news. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. But it's not, no surprise. Warner Media CEO Jason Kilar said, speaking about CNN's coverage at a media conference, it turns out the pandemic is a pretty big part of the news cycle, and that's not going away anytime soon. It turns out it's really good for ratings. Yeah. The comments drew a comparison by Wall Street Journal's Joe Flint to disgraced media executive Les Moonves' remark during the 2016 election that Donald Trump's then candidacy may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS. Yep. It's good for ratings, and makes you wonder then, what is the media's interest in covering this? If it bleeds, it leads. It just so happens that in this case, if it coughs, it leads, and if you can keep people scared and tuning in, it leads. Now, bad news for the media industry. Bad news for the fear porn industry from Bloomberg via MSN.com. U.S. coronavirus cases post slowest spread since pandemic began. Now, one of the things that I've not been able to predict about this, as much as I have been able to predict the texture, the means of enforcement, the flavor of propaganda, and how this thing has been extended, I think it's impossible to say how long it will be extended. And it may be that the fatigue is setting into the point now where they have to say, oh, well, the spread is slowing, so vaccines are here, and we're going to ease up pretty soon. But I don't want to say, yes, it is the light at the end of the tunnel, we are almost through this, because at any second they could say, well, according to our research, if we tell the American people that there's a deadly new version of corona that none of the vaccines are any good for, we can go straight back to 2 weeks to flatten the curve. What was 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Oh, yeah, that was Trump's policy from a year and a week ago. That's right. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve. What are you going to do to celebrate? With the U.S. vaccination ever picking up speed, new coronavirus cases in the U.S. rose only 1.5% in the week ended Sunday, the slowest increase since the pandemic began almost a year ago. The U.S. reported 420,285 infections for the week after recording 471,198 in the prior 7 days. The percentage gain was the smallest since Bloomberg began tracking cases in January. That looks like a decrease. But yeah, I guess they're going total cases, cumulative, something like that. I mean, the manipulation of the numbers is just so ridiculous. What does it represent if the mainstream media is saying that the numbers are coming down, the government is saying that numbers are coming down? It means either their ability to fake it is running to an end, right? Like they can't say, well, there have been 500 million cases of COVID in America because there are only 330 something million of us here. But if they get to the point, there's certain mathematical limits where the relevance or credibility goes away. But if they say, oh, new variant, all those numbers go to zero, resetting, and here they come all over again, then we might get to stay in this sort of lockdown go back to lockdown for a long time. Cron.com, those fever scanners that everyone is using to fight COVID can be wildly inaccurate, researchers say. Yeah, shocking. Same with the tests and the false positives. And now the thing about these, the thermal cameras, temperature tablet kiosks, they can scan you and say if you have a fever. Just there are a lot of ways that people can beat them. There are a lot of ways that they don't detect people who are sick, or if you haven't developed a fever yet but are sick. And I was thinking about false positives too. I had to do I think a thermal scan. I think twice. I think once at the airport in Hawaii, and then once at the courthouse in Prescott. And both times I was saying, well, what if I just have the regular flu and a little fever from that? Am I not allowed to come in here now with the flu? And it's like, well, you should stay home. It's the same risk. And okay, well, now we see that even that is a terrible way of doing it. Whereas we have the technology to have instant or near instant blood prick tests as we have had for months. The fact that that is being kept from us should still bother people. The Atlantic, as I was saying for Mental Health Monday, we're going to have some intersectionality here. Late stage pandemic is messing with your brain. We have been doing this so long. We're forgetting how to be normal, but really in just a year. Now, yeah, maybe it's an exaggeration to say that we're forgetting how to be normal, but yes, we have fallen so far out of those habits for a lot of people that there is a major long-term effect from this that is going to take, even if it were all over soon, it's going to take a long time to come out of and adjust from. I first became aware that I was losing my mind in late December. It was a Friday night, the start of my 40-something pandemic weekend, hours and hours with no work to distract me and outside temperatures prohibitive of anything other than staying in. I can, for the life of me, figure out how to fill the time. What did I used to do on weekends? I asked my boyfriend, like a soap opera amnesiac. He couldn't really remember either. Now, there's something about this lockdown, this whole pandemic experience that has been a teachable moment, I think, in a very positive way for a lot of people, right? And I think about it like this person, really? You had all this time and you couldn't, like, it's not like, I mean, yes, a certain amount of your freedom was taken away. I mean, I've been in jail cells with, nothing, literally nothing. Like I've been, okay, I've never been locked naked in a jail cell. I've had clothes on me most of the time I've been locked up. But only boring people get bored. Like, really, you couldn't figure it out? Like, is it really dumbed you down that much? And of all the things that this is revealing about people, our weaknesses and lack of resiliency being revealed, I hope, is something that is taken as a teachable moment. As the article goes on, everywhere I turn, the fog of forgetting has crept in. A friend of mine recently confessed that the morning routine he comfortably maintained for a decade, wake up before 7, shower, dress, get on the subway, now feels unimaginable on a literal level. He cannot put himself back there. Another's forgotten how to tie a tie. A coworker isn't sure her toddler remembers what it's like going to go shopping in a store. The comedian Kylie Brakeman made a joke video of herself attempting to recall pre-pandemic life, the mania flashing across her face. You know what I miss is like those night restaurants that served alcohol. What were those called? And there were the like big men outside who would check your credit card to make sure you were 41. Jen George, a community college teacher from Cape Elizabeth, Maine, told me she is losing her train of thought in the middle of a sentence more and more often. Meanwhile, her third grader, who is attending in-person school, keeps leaving his books, papers, and lunch at home. Ini Ikiolu, 19-year-old student from Ireland, says she has found herself forgetting how to do things she used to do on a regular basis, swiping her bus pass, paying for groceries. Recently, she came across a photo of a close friend she hadn't seen since lockdown and found that she couldn't recognize her. It wasn't like I had forgotten her existence, but if I had bypassed her on the street, I wouldn't have said hi. Rachel Coward, a research psychologist in Ottawa, used to have a standing Friday night dinner with her neighbors and went completely blank when one of them recently mentioned it. Quote, "It was really shocking. This was something I really loved and had done for a long time, and I'd really forgotten. This is the fog of late pandemic, excuse me. And it is brutal. In the spring, we joked about the before times, but they were still within reach, easily accessible in our short-term memories. In the summer and fall, with restrictions loosening and temperatures rising, we were able to replicate some of what life used to be like, at least in an adulterated form, outdoor drinks, a day at the beach. But now in the cold, dark, featureless middle of our pandemic winter, we can neither remember what life was like before or imagine what it'll be like after. Now, there, okay, so it addresses prolonged boredom here. Prolonged boredom is somewhat paradoxically hugely stressful, Franklin said. Our brains hate it. What's very clear in the literature is that environmental enrichment, being outside of your home, bumping into people, commuting, all of these changes that we are collectively being deprived of, is very associated with synaptic plasticity, the brain's inherent ability to generate new connections and learn new things. In the 1960s, the neuroscientist Marion Diamond conducted a series of experiments on rats in an attempt to understand how environment affects cognitive function. Time after time, the rats raised in enriched cages, ones with toys and playmates, performed better at mazes. That's right. Keep you locked up long enough, keep you in solitary long enough, your brain will atrophy, and you'll be less likely to be able to escape. So, it is this is nothing that someone who is smart and capable and determined with the to develop mental resilience cannot overcome. There are going to be stresses and challenges for everyone. I mean, unless you live already completely isolated in a cabin in the woods like I do, right? And even with me, I'm going to be affected by this, going into town, not being able to travel the same way, or encountering a different world when I go out and travel. Even I am affected by this. But I'd like to think that I have enough psychological resiliency. I have enough self-awareness. I think this is a really important mental health Monday kind of story to say, look, be aware of how this is affecting you, and figure out ways of getting your brain what it needs as much as your body. From Politico.com, in 2018, diplomats warned of risky coronavirus experiments in a Wuhan lab. No one listened. After seeing a risky lab, they wrote a cable warning to Washington, but it was ignored. Yeah, more conspiracy theories, more reason to think that we're never going to find the real origin of this. The Sun, the U.S. Sun, new COVID rules. Fully vaccinated Americans can meet in groups indoors without masks or distancing, but must cover faces in public. Now, wait a second. It kind of reminds me of that John Lennon quote. Why is it that as human beings, we can make war and violence and destruction and commit murder and atrocities in public, but we have to make love in private? So if you can meet in groups indoors without masks or distancing, but you have to cover your face in public, it means they want you to be obedient. They want you to be a part of the herd. They don't want you to show that you don't have to do this. They don't want you to see that you don't have to wear a mask. No, they want to keep people's faces covered up. They want to maintain this control. So whether they're going to let this out, I don't know, but we will see. One of the things about this positive pushing technology forward in terms of sanitation and hygiene, robots. Yeah, robo-waiters proved to be a necessity for contactless Portland area bistro. About 1 year into the virus pandemic, the return to normalcy for the restaurant industry is unlikely. More than 100,000 restaurants have already failed. And really, this is the bigger story. Revenues remain collapsed, millions of workers laid off. There was a glimmer of hope on Friday when some 75% of all U.S. job gains in February were waiters and bartenders. Beside that, COVID-19 has cleared the way for restaurant automation, automatic kiosks, robot bartenders, Flippy, the hamburger robot, automated pizza kitchens. List goes on. How restaurant operators who have survived lockdowns are finding digital solutions for ordering, food prep, delivering, even serving. So remember this, the bigger story again. 100,000 restaurants have failed. Millions of workers laid off in the restaurant industry. And Donald Trump, I mean, going back to this, but Donald Trump said, yeah, restaurants are going to go out of business, but they're going to come back with new owners. Don't worry. Well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm worried about. Now, to the mask mandates being lifted in Texas and Mississippi, people still fighting over that. BozemanDailyChronicle.com has this headline: Republican reopenings sharpen political divide over virus. And it's funny because I want to say, look, this is where Republicans believe in freedom and Democrats don't. But it's just one place. It's not. And even then, this isn't Republicans believing that you should have freedom. This is Republicans believing still, same as Democrats, that government should decide how much freedom you have. You don't have the right to set your own level of risk. Government is going to do that for you. Decisions by 2 Republican governors to remove all coronavirus restrictions in their states have reignited the political debate on the pandemic response, elevating it as a campaign issue this year and in 2022. So you are going to see more of this now leading into the next election cycle. Now, how is this affecting kids and, kids who want to learn to read good and do other things good too? USAtoday.com. Did you catch the Zoolander reference? I shoehorned into that. Students are struggling to read behind masks and screens during COVID-19, but expectations are no different. Reading brings out the competitor in 8-year-old Uriah Hargrave, the second grader at Eaton Park Elementary in Vermilion Parish along Louisiana's southwest coast, was thrilled to return to in-person learning in January. One of his favorite things is the Accelerated Reader program, in which he wins points for the books he reads. Yeah, don't read for the joy. Don't read to learn. Read for the points. Remember how we talked about this developing into narcissistic behavior later? Well, gee, kid, you must be better than these other kids because look at all these points you got for reading. His points pay off in extra free time outside in Starbucks that he can use to buy erasers and spy pens. That's not Starbucks, that's Starbucks, as in bucks made from stars. Yeah, or bucks for star student children. Yet too many children may be falling behind in the reading game during the pandemic. Teachers and experts say the USA Today network visited a handful of classrooms in different states to see how schools are adapting as the teachers ask about students learning to read in early grade so they can read to learn the rest of their lives has never been put to a greater test and failed. Learning to read is so challenging, said Laura Taylor, professor of education studies at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee. It's a long process that takes years. Lost time from when school shut down, inconsistent schedule since then, blah, 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 blah. But early indications hint at how much ground is being lost, especially among younger grades. According to one analysis covering 400,000 students in 1,400 schools, 41 states, show that compared to last year, twice as many Black kindergarten students are at greater risk of not learning to read. Yeah. And Uriah's district standardized tests administered at the start of this school year revealed how much had been lost from shutting down schools in March. Among kindergartners, the test showed 47% were at grade level, a drop from 77% the previous year. So it'd be nice to think that like homeschooling and unschooling was picking up the slack for government failing here, but it's not yet. And who knows? There are some counterpoints to this story, in the sense that maybe kids just aren't filling out the tests online. Maybe they're not doing. Maybe they're learning more in other ways, but I don't think that's entirely the case. I don't think, and reading is really mistaught in schools. The unschooling example is such an obvious one because the government school answer to teach kids how to read is sit them down in cemetery row seating and have them do drills and routines and punish them and reward them and force them into a system where they are just told on faith to believe that reading is going to be important for them and good for them, and they should do it not because they want to, but because it's part of the system and they're being manipulated into doing it this way, as opposed to the unschooling method, which is, hey, put a kid who doesn't know how to read next to a kid who's playing a video game that you need to be able to read in order to play. They're going to want to learn how to read really fucking fast. Like it's not like, oh shit, I have to learn how to read because I wanted, this is fun. And that's, the difference with unschooling is it naturally engages the child's mind to learn and engage and assimilate information in their environment the way it's designed to. Shocking, right? Cemetery rows, seating, being taught, how to think, not or what to think, not how to think. That's not good for kids learning. So there might be some other metric to how much kids are learning outside of school that might offset this, but I don't want to diminish the legitimate achievement of government education. Like, kids do learn how to read in government schools. They would learn faster if they, do you want to give them credit for that, or do you want to say that they're slowing you down? Right? It's sort of like if you're using a crutch for too long and the muscles in your leg atrophy, and then your bone heals, excuse me, and then you take the crutch away, you might stumble for a little while as you regain that muscle. You might not be as steady as you were with that crutch. In a sense, that's what American education is going through right now. So KDVR.com, Fox 21 Colorado. We have a protest against masks, whatever, I don't know. Boulder police, CU partygoers assault officers, damage property. Boulder police said partiers at a massive CU street party Saturday night assaulted 3 officers with bricks and rocks and caused significant property damage. Police spokesperson Dion Waugh said detectives are reviewing a large amount of video evidence of the incidents with the goal to charge and identify individuals involved in the destruction. One armored police vehicle sustained heavy damage, as did a fire truck. In a statement released on Twitter, Boulder Police Chief Mayer said detectives will identify and arrest those responsible for this reprehensible and unacceptable behavior. And if you look at some of this video, I don't know if you want to post this up on screen, CJ, or if it's Andy here. I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of mask wearing going on. Sounds like more of a mask protest out of control that was in the form of a party than just a run-of-the-mill party happening these days. So, okay, catching up with the Producers Club. So we got a lot of comments here, more articles being shared. Yeah, I guess I should mention, sidebar here, totally out of the block. Derek Chauvin trial is getting started. This is the officer who killed George Floyd. This is one of those drama stories that I avoid covering on Adam versus the Man, kind of like until it's done. Do I really want to tell you what's going on at the Chauvin trial every day? Oh, jury selection is this. No, that's a distraction story. We're going to stick to real news, like this from the newstimes.com. And this is actually from the Washington Post. Don't worry, we're going to get to the mask burning part, Stephen. It's in our block. Biden struggles with school reopenings. Now, and when I first saw this, like, Biden's in charge of schools? Why is the guy most in charge of education policy in the United States someone with, well, he did have a paid professorship where he got paid like $250,000 for every lecture he gave. Yeah, look at Biden's little sweet little gig there. Interesting backstory. The promise was clear and hopeful. With strong public health measures, President-elect Joe Biden declared in early December the majority of our schools can be open by the end of my first 100 days. The reality has been far more complicated. First came the clarification on Biden's first full day as president when the administration released a 200-page coronavirus response plan that explained that the school's reopening schedule only included K-8 schools, not high schools, in those first 100 days. Then came a walk back from White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who said the administration's goal was only to have the majority of schools back in classrooms at least one day a week. Right, and finally came Biden's walk back of the walk back in a CNN town hall, in which he described the 1 day a week standard as a mistake in the communication. He's still expected to be close to opening the majority of K-8 schools 5 days a week by April 30, the end of his first 100 days in office. Really? Politician was lying, overpromising, under-delivering? Shocking. Another effect of this from the New York Times: we expect 300,000 fewer births than usual this year. Signs are pointing to a sizable pandemic baby bust in the United States, with implications that will be with us for years to come. Now, if it was a short lockdown, we would have had the little baby boom with all the coronitas being born from people being locked up and deciding to have kids. But given once we have the fall off in people meeting and making babies, and of course the economic insecurity that leads people to be less inclined to have kids, it's going to be bad. So from the Sun, one more from the Sun: feed them to the fire. Yes, we are going to end our Corona block today with this headline of pushing back. Shocking moment: Idaho kids tossed COVID mask in a burning trash can at Burn the Mask rally. I mean, This is something that I proposed a long time ago. Really cool to see it come into fruition, but it's not going to be like burning draft cards, but this is awesome. This is the shocking moment. Idaho kids tossed COVID masks into burning trash cans at a Burn the Mask rally. Yeah, Boise, Idaho captured people of all ages, including a handful of children throwing their protective face coverings in a fiery garbage can. One kid in the 14-second video, which was shared to Twitter and has since obtained more than 37,000 views, is heard saying, "Here, fire, you hungry? Here's another mask." A poster board seen in the footage read, "No masks, no mandates, our face, our mind." I like just my body, my choice. Another sign had a Franklin quote: "Those who give up liberty to purchase safety deserve neither liberty or safety." As the children took turns disposing of their surgical masks in the blazing fire, others stood by watching and recording the celebratory event on their cell phones. Photographs from the mask burning event showed the protesters burning a light blue surgical mask with the words "Biden sucks" written on what appears to be black marker. So I just want to point this out as a really important story, because they're going to start taking down the mask mandates because of events like this. And they're going to tell you it's because they did such a great job containing COVID. Oh, why is COVID over? Oh, it's not because the people realized that it was a hoax and an exaggerated threat, and that the shutdowns and the lockdowns and the mandates had nothing to do with your health, and that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer during this time. Yeah, it's going to be because government did such a great job. There was this huge threat that came out of nowhere. No one could have predicted it, and we saved you. Don't let government tell the story of what happened. Don't let government tell stories, period, because they are all lies meant to manipulate you. Remember, there are a lot of statistics flying around right now about COVID, and 86.75309% of all statistics are total bullshit made up to manipulate you. And that's our COVID block. All right, now racing through a few headlines before we get back to the comments and check in with Stephen to round out our show with the good news. Far-right platform Gab has been hacked. This is from Wired.com, including private data. We mentioned this last week. The transparency group DDO Secret says it will make the 70 gigabytes of passwords, private posts, and more available to researchers, journalists, and social scientists. And I wonder if there's going to be some, ethical issue with this, right? It's like accepting stolen property. Like if I'm a researcher and I want to publish the findings of my study, and I took data that was stolen from you as a Gab user, is that really ethical for me to do that? Is that excuse me, or by sharing that, am I, even if it's not by my own violation of your privacy, contributing to that, or profiting from it? Anyway, the Washington Post via GreenwichTime.com: home security cameras have become a fruitful resource for law enforcement and a fatal risk. Now, I love this. We have technology making people safer, and government is complaining about it because when they're doing things that they should not be safe in doing, they're getting caught. Police forces across the U.S. are 20,000 requests last year for footage captured by Ring's video doorbells and other home security cameras, underscoring how the rapid growth of inexpensive home surveillance technology has given American law enforcement an unprecedented ability to monitor neighborhood life. The requests reflect the Amazon-owned company's policy of allowing police and fire departments to request video from camera owners who live near the scene of a crime. Some officers have celebrated the digital informants for helping them gather valuable evidence and watch over the public at large. And this is great. I mean, I want cameras like everywhere except where you don't want them in your private property. I want cameras. I want accountability. I want that footage controlled in a responsible way that doesn't violate people's privacy in any unnecessary way, even in a false expectation of privacy in public, right? I mean, if I'm walking down the street picking my nose, I'd rather not security cameras like zoom in from across the street and blast that all over the internet to make fun of me, right? But if there's a murder happening behind me while I'm picking my nose, yeah, let my nose picking be exposed to catch a murderer. And it's kind of similar with these doorbell cameras now that, you know, we have law enforcement, unfortunately, being the means of controlling that footage, where they subpoena, as opposed to a private security company, which would say, hey, we're making money keeping people safe, and if you help us by giving us the footage or access to your doorbell security camera, we'll cut you in on the action. And that way, everybody benefits and profits appropriately for contributing to public safety and accountability in a way that eventually will make crime pretty much irrelevant. But right now, cops are complaining about this because it means that a South Florida gunman, who authorities said killed 2 FBI agents in an apartment complex last month during one of the deadliest days in Bureau history. 2 agents died. Okay. Had been seen approaching his door through a home camera before opening fire. Oh, you mean you can defend your home better even against government agents? You mean government agents can't just sneak up on motherfuckers in their homes now? You mean that if you're going to catch a guy in his house, you have to be peaceful and nonviolent and do a stakeout instead and de-escalate and put that effort in instead of just going in guns blazing? Well, fuck you. Fuck you for saying that's a bad thing, cops. Really? Yeah, they don't have the ability to sneak up on people in their doors. We've had peepholes. It's not like it's anything new, but it's making it just a little bit. We have this incredible technology that's making people safer, even making cops' jobs easier all over the country. And they're complaining, well, at this one point, we don't get to fuck with people the same way we used to. Oh, okay. Now, to Russia, this is actually U.S. government sort of doing, right. I don't give government credit for doing the right thing ever. Huffington Post. U.S. announces sanctions over Russia opposition leader Alexei Navalny's poisoning. Biden administration officials did not immediately identify the Russian officials targeted by the sanctions. Now, targeted sanctions against people who work for government, blah, 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 blah. Sanctions are fun, punishing, taking freedom away from people who might not have done anything wrong, right? You're just saying these people no longer allowed to trade or interact with these people. And that's what sanctions are. Not really an appropriate punishment, but I am glad that it represents that the U.S. government can no longer, with credibility, ignore what's going on in Russia and how Putin's government is suppressing the movement and the message and the candidacy of and the health and freedom of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. So I am glad. While sanctions are not the answer, I am glad that this is getting more attention. Excuse me. From the Associated Press, UK royals absorb shock of revealing Harry Meghan interview. This is right. Former Prince Harry and Princess Meghan. Britain and its royal families absorbed the tremors Monday from a sensational TV interview with Prince Harry and Meghan, in which the couple said they encountered racist attitudes and a lack of support that drove the Duchess to thoughts of suicide. In a 2-hour soul-bearing interview by Oprah Winfrey, the couple painted a deeply unflattering picture of life inside the royal household, depicting a cold, uncaring institution that they had to flee to save their lives. And I mean, this. I'm a little bit torn over this story because there's a lot of bullshit hero worship, royal worship. Just hey, if you're part of the royal family, you're special and better than us. And I really want to be careful to not reinforce that. But if you, I think there is reason. I have definitely avoided the sort of day-to-day drama headlines of the Harry Meghan split from the royal family. This whole episode. But I do think it's not only worth mentioning to be like, for my audience, to say, hey, people are going to be talking about this at the water cooler. You should at least kind of know what it is. But I think there's actually significant value in looking at this as the failure of a modern monarchy. Now, of course, it's not like he's the only prince. There's still Prince William and Meghan, goddamn, what's her name? The other, shit. I don't care. I really do deliberately avoid, a lot of this, the kind of celebrity aspect of this for the same reason I avoided in American politics. But I I do hope that Harry and Meghan are able, like, they have so much attention. This interview with Oprah Winfrey got something like 17 million views live, and beat the Golden Globes, and like for ratings was just like on top of every, like, more people watch this, and so it's worth covering just for that. But like I said, there is some value to saying a monarchy failed. Say you could have been a prince and you decided to leave. I don't know. Is he still technically a prince? They're still calling him Prince Harry in this article. But I think they are. I think they're in a really good position, and I mean, if they were listening right now, I'm sure they're not. I would say I hope they do good things. They did walk away with a lot of money, and they're still massive global celebrities. If in this interview that they did with Oprah, yeah, I'm probably gonna watch it, and I mean, I don't know. I almost don't want. I mean, it's like celebrity circle jerk, but there's more to it than this. And right now they're just. It looks like they're just portraying their negative experience and justifying leaving the royal family. But excuse me, I hope there's something more to it than that. They're not really challenging the British government. They're not really challenging the concept of monarchy, but at a deeper psychological level, they really are. So good for them. From the Associated Press. Pope, top Iraq Shiite cleric, deliver a message of coexistence. Yeah. If you want to be the Pope these days, you can't pretend that all Muslims are evil. If you want to be a big Muslim muckety muck, you can't pretend that all Christians are evil. Pope Francis walked through a narrow alley in Iraq's holy city of Najaf for a historic meeting with the country's top Shiite clerics Saturday, and together they delivered a powerful message of peaceful coexistence in a country still reeling from back-to-back conflicts over the past decade. In a gesture both simple and profound, Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani welcomed Francis into his Spartan home. The 90-year-old cleric, one of the most eminent among Shiites worldwide, afterwards said Christians should live in peace in Iraq and enjoy the same rights as other Iraqis. The Vatican, said Francis, thanked al-Sistani for having, quote, raised his voice in defense of the weakest and most persecuted during some of the most violent times in Iraq's history. I don't know why I have an alarm going off and my phone frozen, but that's it for our headlines today. We're going to skip over the two military tech stories in order to check in with the audience. Let's get Stephen back up on stage here. Any other comments you want to share, brother, or any? Do you have a pick for comment of the day?
I knew my comment of the day, and then this shit came up. So we're gonna go with this one. This is the comment of the day. Can you bring that picture up so people can remember
those man dresses? Is he talking about the ones that the Pope and Sistani are?
Yes.
Okay, no, that's great. Yeah, no, it's funny, as much as people make fun of or Christians and people in the West tend to make fun of Arabs in general for wearing the dishdasha, the man dress. By the way, I've worn them. I wore them in Iraq when I was off duty because they're fucking comfortable, and especially in a desert climate, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. But what's funny in pointing out here is that the Pope, as religious leaders, often wear costumes to denote their authority. The closer to God you get, the fancier you have to dress in order to show people how close you are to God.
It's all about the hat and the dress.
No one's got a better wardrobe than the fucking Pope. You look at these Muslim clerics; they're very humble and simple by comparison.
Well, there was a movie. What was it? Was it Road Trip or Euro Trip? Did you ever see Euro Trip? They went like around Europe and they ended up in the Vatican. And at one point, like they did the thing where everyone thought that the Pope had died, and then like they burnt the shit and the smoke went up. But anyways, there was a scene where like this dumbass stoner kid's wearing the Pope hat and he's running around trying to get away from security. And the fucking Vatican lost their mind over that shit. They're like, how did you recreate our little hat? Don't do that. You're going to hell. And he's like, dude, it's a fucking movie. But he had like,
Wow.
and I just thought that was hilarious. But, yeah, you win, sir. You win.
What was your second choice? Because You've Been Trolled, I happen to know, is actually already a member of our producers club.
He was my second choice, and then there was, who was the guy? You got told that the Judaism look doesn't look good on you, and he made fun of your nose for a minute. Which I think
doesn't growing the beard out make my nose look small? I mean, look, as big as my nose looks now, you know they say a politician with a beard is hiding something. Well, in my case, it's a weak chin. Okay, so like imagine this much less face. Do you know how much bigger my nose would look? Like it would really stick out a lot more than it does even now. So you're welcome for adopting the Jewish look. No, I don't know. Just, this is long hair and just a beard. That's the Jewish look. I don't know.
Greg's already on here. Yeah, that Jew. If I can find that Jew comment, he'll get it because that was
it's not even. That's not even a good troll comment.
Yeah, I mean there wasn't a lot of good troll comments. I want people to be mean again. Make America mean again.
All right. Well, you've been trolled. Congratulations, you win another membership in the Adam versus the Man Producers Club. Anything else you got to share today before we wrap this one up, Steven?
Well, I sent you that thing about the George Floyd stuff, and it's not really. I sent it because of the picture. If you look at the courthouse, and they're not really talking about this, do you know how they're getting people in the courthouse today? Through a fucking helicopter. They have locked that thing down so tight that you can't drive a car through it. So they're having to helicopter them into the top of the building. So, court systems are supposed to be we the people, right? It's a jury of your peers. And from what I read, a couple of days ago, they brought in all the camera equipment, they brought in all the stuff, they brought in all the paperwork, they ran a fence around the building, they ran another fence around that, another fence around that, another fence around that, and they're flying security guards in, or police officers, and they're flying lawyers in, just to do this. And it's like, first of all, have you fuckers not heard of Zoom? Where have you been last year?
This is such an important show trial. They have to do it in person. But no, I mean, the helicopter thing, yes, it illuminates a lot of other problems, obviously, right, with the court system. But like for this one in particular, I'm not that that. Yeah, they're gonna have to helicopter people in because at any time you could anybody trying to manipulate this trial one way or another, pro cop, anti cop, whatever, could raise a crowd and block vehicle entrance to the building. Okay,
so at what point do we stop helicoptering people in? Like, if that is our prerogative, do we get to the point where they might stop it over a traffic citation? So from now on, you're going to have to go to this secondary facility, and we're going to fly you in to talk to the judge over a traffic ticket or a joint? I'm sorry, but what I've seen over the last 2 months with these fences and these armed guards everywhere and these National Guardsmen, what's that book? Oh, 1984, motherfuckers.
Yeah, all right. Well, on that note of good news, I've already got, just checking my email, we've got a couple people who have emailed about Homefront Battle Buddies. I'm going to be forwarding these on. But CJ, thank you for getting this up on screen to wrap up the show. Adam Kokesh is recruiting, that's right, for the Gardenia Sovereignty Project for Adam versus the Man, this podcast production, especially on the technical production and social media and distributing efforts. And Homefront Battle Buddies, our new veterans nonprofit. So please check out that flyer that you're seeing on screen right now, or that I'm reading off of if you're just listening to this, on my Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Twitter, probably the best for reliability. Twitter.com/Adam Kokesh, or whatever it is, at Adam Kokesh on Twitter. Find me there. And any other way you want to support the show, at AdamVersusTheMan.com. Find us on Patreon, merch, etc., etc. And with that, peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness. and be excellent to each other.